All right, here we go. Another week of rental houses versus high income ETFs. So, if you've been following me at all, you'll know the story that we sold a rental house. We actually sold several rental houses. And this particular house we sold in the fall of 2024. And we took $70,000 of the proceeds and put it into some covered call and high income ETFs. And my theory was that would produce better income than if we kept the house. So the house was paid off. It was a small rental house. I live in Northwest Illinois, and real estate is relatively still inexpensive here compared to other parts of the country, but real estate taxes are relatively super expensive compared to other parts of the country. So it all kind of evens out, I suppose. So this is an update on those results, and I hope you enjoy. So if you haven't subscribed, that'd be great and awesome if you would subscribe. And every other YouTube video I watch tells you to like the video and turn on notifications, but other YouTube videos don't tell you this, that this might be bad advice. So this is not financial advice. It's not tax advice. It's not any type of advice. This is what I do, and it works for me. And I'm just sharing it in case anybody's interested, may want to try it themselves at their own risk. Remember, this could be bad advice depending on who you talk to, except for me. So I like to look real quick, see how the market is doing in general. So this is the SPY, S&P 500. And you can see that S&P is at all-time highs, I believe. The Bollinger Band here is right here, and price is toward the top of the Bollinger Band. You look at the RSI being 61 here. I'm expecting a pullback here soon, like maybe next week. That black line is the 20-day moving average. The red line is the 50-day moving average. So how big of a pullback? I don't know. If you look at these dips here, this one, and this one, I may be expecting maybe a 3 or 4% dip, and then probably continuing higher. That's just my guess. Not any type of advice to do anything. So getting to this project. So this is a little bit different screenshot than what I have been posting. So this shows the account value. So we started at 70,000. November 2024, about 14 and a half months, it's grown to 98,504. So that's not too bad. And these are the different ETFs I'm using over here. That's changed and has evolved since I started this project. My favorites are QQQI, TDAC, and SPY. You can see the balances here, and you can see how many shares of each that we have. When I started this project, I had a whole bunch of QDTE, and I thinned that down a little bit and redistributed the money amongst all these other ones here. And in some other videos, I told you what I wished I would have done different, but it is what it is. And starting a few months ago, I started selling some options on this account to generate some extra income. So you can see currently I have a couple cash secured puts out there, and the value of one of them is at about $70. The other one's at $56. Now these are still open. I haven't closed them yet, so that could change, but I'll show you what has closed here in a few seconds. And I'm using margin for this account. So I'm using $63,000 in margin, and this $20,000 in option collateral is from these cash secured puts. So the way it works with Robinhood and Fidelity is that you can sell cash secured puts against margin, and you're not getting charged interest on the margin unless you get assigned shares of the stocks. So I'm kind of able to borrow this money without really borrowing it. It's there if I need to borrow it, and it shows here how much is being used, 20,000, but I'm not paying any interest on this. So it's kind of like an interest-free cosigner in a way. I don't know how you want to explain it, but I am using $63,000 in margin for some of these ETFs that I have. And people are always saying, margin, that's horrible. You're going to go broke and lose all your money. Your wife's going to take your dogs and leave you. Well, you can see it's low risk here. The other thing, I was 22 years old and I went way in debt borrowing money to buy rental property. And I stayed in debt for the next close to 38 years of buying real estate. I just kept buying and borrowing and buying and borrowing and buying. And it worked out pretty good. So when it comes to debt, I'm not that afraid of it. Now, Dave Ramsey would freak out, but Robert Kiyosaki, he would tell you that debt is good. That's how you get ahead in life. So I'm somewhere in between. I'm not crazy with debt, but I'm not afraid of it either. Now, there's good debt and bad debt. I'm not going to get down a rabbit hole. So Dave Ramsey's right about debt, except he's wrong about borrowing money to buy assets. And assets, I don't mean a fishing boat. I mean real estate and assets that appreciate in money. So, for example, these ETFs, I consider that an asset. So using margin to buy an asset to me is not dangerous at all. In fact, I think it's a smart thing to do, and you'll see my return here in a few minutes, and you'll agree with me by the time this video is over. So how does this margin get paid off? Well, it gets paid off from the distributions weekly and monthly from the different ETFs. So you can see what we've gotten lately. So Monday we'll be getting 100 MAGY. We just got $126 from QDTE. Last Monday we got 180 approximately from MAGY. And beginning of January, we got a big one, 1,378 from QDTE. That was actually a payout for December, but I didn't get the money till January. They had to pay that out for some tax reasons, and I won't get into that too much, but basically they can't hold on to money past the end of the year because of tax reasons, like I just said. So they pay it out. So that's not typical. Typical would be, well, what was typical is about $160 to $180, and now it's 126. So anxious to see how that looks going forward. The other way I'm getting money to pay off the debt is from the cash secured puts and options that I'm selling. And you see for December, when I started this is all the closed trades that I made on cash secured puts mostly. And where this line is separates December from January. So far in January, I've closed 3 cash secured puts, and that's approximately $258, I believe. I have that total down below here in a second. Actually, $258 right down here, option income. So I keep track of monthly the distributions and the option income that I'm getting. Down here is the monthly total. And I started fresh January 1st with fresh numbers. And if you want to see how things turned out at the end of 2025, you can go back and look at the previous video where I did a wrap up showing everything. But so far for 2026 in January, we've collected $1,840 when you include the distributions and the option income. And I did pay $281 for the margin interest that you can see right here, so I keep track of that. Some things I don't keep track of. There's some tiny fees for the option income, like 60 cents, and I don't really keep track of that, but the numbers are right, but I don't put every little penny on here. It just gets too busy with the spreadsheets. So as the balance gets paid down, the margin, I will occasionally jump in and buy more shares of ETF. So you can see this goes back to July 2025. It actually goes back all the way to 2024, but there's not enough room to show everything. I just like to put that on there so you can see what I'm doing. You see down here, I sold some things and then I redistributed and I bought some things. I added TDAC to this portfolio, and TDAC was not part of the portfolio before. In fact, TDAC is only about 4 months old, so that's why it's kind of new. But I want to balance things out a little bit, and I'm a big fan of T-SPY, which is like the sister fund of TDAC. So I have confidence that the fund managers will do the same type of things with TDAC and have success, and I'll be happy. And that's all that counts. So overall, in 2025, this experiment returned 36.8%. And I think the S&P was up even 15%. So far for this year, I'm up 3.31%. So this is like January 10th. So for the first 10 days, we're up 3.31%. And compared to market indexes like the SPY, the S&P 500 is up 1.72% since the first of the year. QQQ is up almost 2%. You can see AIPI. These are funds that I'm holding actually, so that's why they're in here. So AIPI is up basically nothing. QDTE is up 1.69%. SPY 1.2%. QQQI 1.4%. MAGY is actually down a little bit, 1.61%. So I like to compare things to QQQ and SPY. And you see most of them are doing well except for this one and this one. So I'll keep an eye on those and may have to say goodbye to them this year sometime, but we'll see. We'll give them a few more weeks. So overall, what I did, I projected how things would go in my life. Over here on the left is how I project things will go for the next year or so. So we started January 1. These were the balances that I brought forward from 2025. Equity was 95,254. I was at 65,898 in margin. So total I had invested earning distributions was 151,152. You see those numbers are right over here, January 1st. That's where we're starting. So my expectation is that I'm going to earn 3/4 of 1% each week going forward. And so this would be the weekly gain, my projection, and this is what the yearly total will be year to date. And this margin equity is how much margin I'm using compared to the amount of equities. This number here is 63% right here. So this is 63% of this number here. So my goal originally was to use 75% and keep it nice and even. Well, I changed my plan a little bit. I'm going to try to get this down to 50%. And what I'm showing here is how I'm projecting this will go. So right here where this is green, I'll have my margin at 50% of my equity. So this is 50% of this about here. And then my goal is to just keep that about 50%, meaning as the margin gets paid down to, like, let's say 45%, I'll turn around and I'll buy some more ETFs and add to the balance, which will push the margin back up to 50%. So the margin going forward should be around 45 to 55%, hovering around 50%. So you see going forward, it's like 50%. So that's what I'm projecting and planning. Year to date, you can't see everything. If everything goes as planned, I'll earn 50% on this account in 12 months by the end of December. Now, people tell me that's impossible and all this other good stuff, and they might be wrong, but they might be right. We'll see. But remember, a year ago, we did 36% compared to 15% for the S&P. So I have confidence in myself. And people say, well, if you didn't do it last year, what makes you think you can do it this year? Well, it's because of the option income that I'm going to be getting this year. I think I can generate about $1,000 a month from the option income once this margin balance gets down to 50%. People think I'm crazy, but that's okay. So anyhow, what actually happened last week, we're at 98,504 for equity, projected to be 96,688, and my margin's at 63,478. So already we're doing pretty good. And that got paid down a little more than planned because of the option income, which was $258 so far. So the weekly gain was 3.31%. Projected was going to be 0.75. So we're doing pretty good. In total is 3.31% compared to 1.51%. So we're doing okay. And then the margin's at 64%. All right. That was a whole bunch of stuff there. So far, we talked about this fund growing and everything, but we haven't mentioned anything about the rental house that this is compared to. The rental house we sold it for $85,000, but we netted about $70,000. We took that money and dumped it into those ETFs, like I just got done talking about. If we would have kept the rental house, at this point, we'd probably be getting about $800 a month rent for it. Expenses would be like $450 a month. Taxes and insurance are super expensive here because it's Illinois. And Illinois likes taxes. Okay, so it is what it is. My balance carried forward from the past 14 months would be about $5,075. That's after paying expenses. I also include a growth in equity of $233 a month, which is about 4% per year. It's just a number that I figure is fair. And so when you take the equity plus the balance of what would be in the checking account, I would have $78,570 if I cashed out, let's say. And yes, everybody tells me, you got closing costs if you sell the house. Yeah, I know that. I just got in selling like half a dozen houses, so I know about closing costs. So, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm just kind of throwing some numbers out here so you can see how things look. People want to know where these expenses come from. So these are from 2021, 22, 23, the actual expenses that came off my tax returns. And the average monthly expense was $368. But also my average rent was only $609. So I wasn't collecting as much rent as I thought I was because my renters didn't pay a couple months. And I put in an estimate that the expenses would go up to $450 and taxes have gone up quite a bit. So I think that's pretty accurate. Plus insurance has gone up a lot too. Now, one thing that's kind of hard to calculate is over here, before we sold the house, we spent $15,000 about getting the house fixed up before we sold it. And I didn't include that with the monthly expenses, but if you add this expense to that expense, you got almost $700 a month in expenses. So really for the past 3 years, we didn't make hardly any money on that house at all. But in order to get $85,000 for it, we need to do some repairs, and those repairs included painting the outside of it, replacing a bunch of windows, replacing some doors, soffit fascia, gutters, a bunch of work. So $15,000 worth of work. So how have things gone since the beginning of time? So since November of 2024 until today, which is January 2026, the ETFs are up almost $20,000. Already, I'm totally happy that we sold that house and we're doing this. The other thing people will throw in there and say, well, how about your tax savings from having a rental house and different things? We only paid about $25,000 to $28,000 for that house. So our yearly depreciation was only like $1,000 a year. So really it was just a small dent. And the other thing I don't want to talk about too much, but these ETFs that we're using right here, they all have a thing called return of capital, which means for tax reasons, they're returning my own money to me until 100% of my money is returned. And since it's my money, I already pay tax on it. I don't have to pay tax on it until all my money is returned. So for example, AIP has a nice even number, 20,000. That's quite the coincidence that it's a nice even number like that. But until I get returned my original investment, all that money will be not taxed for me. When all that money is returned, at that point, those monthly distributions are going to be taxed at long-term capital gains, which is a better deal than ordinary income. Now, I'm not a tax expert. I'm not an expert in anything, but I do know my own financial situation. I know what works for me. I do pay my taxes every year, file a tax return, and I know what goes on the forms. So I kind of know what I'm talking about in my situation, but it's not tax advice. So there you go. There's another disclaimer. I'm just some guy on the internet, not a tax advisor. This is for education and for entertainment only. So do your own due diligence. But for me, I know what I'm doing, kind of. So anyhow, if you enjoy this type of thing, subscribe and watch some of my other videos. If you're interested in options, I got quite a bit of stuff about option income in some other videos. The option income was originally designed just to supplement my income in retirement. But at this point, it's actually providing almost 100% of my income in retirement. So that's a fun, exciting thing. So take a look at that. With that, we'll see you next week.